Thank you for joining me once again for this reading of the Gunslinger, Dark Tower Series Book 1, Part 9, narrated by the Laughing Ogre. Gallows Hill was on the Farson Road, which was nicely poetic. Cuthbert might have appreciated this, but Roland did not. He did not appreciate the splendidly ominous scaffold which climbed into the brilliantly blue sky, a black and angular silhouette which overhung the coach road. The two boys had been let out of morning exercise. Court had read the notes from their fathers laboriously, lips moving, nodding here and there. When he finished with them both, he had looked up at the blue-violet dawn sky and had nodded again. "Wait here," he said, and went toward the leaning stone hut that was his living quarters. He came back with a slice of rough, unleavened bread, broke it in two, and gave half to each. "When it's over, each of you will put this beneath his shoes. Mind you do exactly as I say, or I'll clout you into next week." They had not understood until they arrived, riding double on Cuthbert's gelding. They were the first, fully 2 hours ahead of anyone else, and 4 hours before the hanging. The Gallows Hill stood deserted. Except for the rooks and ravens, the birds were everywhere, and of course they were all black. They roosted noisily on the hard, jutting bar that overhung the trap, the armature of death. They sat in a row along the edge of the platform. They jostled for position on the stairs. "They leave them," Cuthbert muttered, "for the birds." "Let's go up," Roland said. Cuthbert looked at him with something like horror. "Do you think?" Roland cut him off with a gesture of his hands. "We're years early. No one will come." "All right." They walked slowly toward the gibbet, and the birds took indigent wing, cawing and circling like a mob of angry, deposed peasants. Their bodies were flat and black against the pure dawn light of the sky. For the first time, Roland felt the enormity of his responsibility in the matter. This wood was not noble, not part of the awesome machine of civilization, but merely warped pine covered with splattered white bird droppings. It was splashed everywhere. Stairs, railing, platform, and it stank. The boy turned to Cuthbert with startled, terrified eyes, and saw Cuthbert looking back at him with the same expression. "I can't," Cuthbert whispered. "I can't watch it." Roland shook his head slowly. There was a lesson here, he realized. Not a shining thing, but something that was old and rusty and misshapen. It was why their fathers had let them come. And with his unusual, stubborn, and inarticulate doggedness, Roland laid mental hands on whatever it was. "You can, Bert." "I won't sleep tonight." "Then you won't," Roland said, not seeing what that had to do with it. Cuthbert suddenly seized Roland's hand and looked at him with such mute agony that Roland's own doubt came back, and he wished sickly that he had never gone to the West Kitchen that night. His father had been right. Better every man, woman, and child in Farson than this. But whatever the lesson was, rusty, half-buried thing, he would not let it go or give up his grip on it. "Let's not go up," Cuthbert said. "We've seen everything." And Roland nodded reluctantly, feeling his grip on that thing, whatever it was, weaken. Court, he knew, would have knocked them both sprawling and then forced them up to the platform step by cursing step, and sniffing fresh blood back up their noses as they went. Court would probably have looped the new hemp over the yardarm itself and put the noose around each of their necks in turn, would have made them stand on the trap to feel it. And Court would have been ready to strike them again if either wept or lost control of his bladder. And Court, of course, would have been right. For the first time in his life, Roland found himself hating his own childhood. He wished for the size and calluses and sureness of age. He He deliberately pried a splinter from the railing and placed it in his breast pocket before turning away. "Why'd you do that?" Cuthbert asked. He wished to answer something swaggering, "Oh, luck of the gallows," but he only looked at Cuthbert and shook his head. "Just so I'll have it," he said. "Always have it." They walked away from the gallows, sat down, and waited. In an hour or so, the first of them began to gather, mostly families who had come in broken-down wagons and shays, carrying their breakfasts with them, hampers of cold pancakes folded over fillings of wild strawberry jam. Roland felt his stomach growl hungrily and wondered again with despair where the honor and nobility of it was. It seemed to him that Hacks, in his dirty whites, walking around and around his steaming subterranean kitchen, had more honor than this. He fingered the splinter from the gallows tree with sick bewilderment. Cuthbert lay beside him with his face made impassive. In the end, it was not so much, and Roland was glad. Hacks was carried in an open cart, but only his huge girth gave him away. He had been blindfolded, with a wide black cloth that hung down over his face. A few threw stones, but most merely continued with their breakfast. A gunslinger, whom the boy did not know, he was glad his father had not drawn the lot, led the fat cook carefully up the steps. 2 guards of the watch had gone ahead and stood on either side of the trap. When Hacks and the gunslinger reached the top, the gunslinger threw the noosed rope over the crosstree and put it over the cook's head, dropping the knot until it lay just below the left ear. The birds had all flown, but Roland knew they were waiting. "Do you wish to make confession?" the gunslinger asked. "I have nothing to confess," Hacks said. His words carried well, and his voice was oddly dignified in spite of the muffle of the cloth which hung over his lips. The cloth ruffled slightly in the faint, pleasant breeze that had blown up. "I have not forgotten the face of my fathers, and it has been with me through all." Roland glanced sharply at the crowd and was disturbed by what he saw there. A sense of sympathy? Perhaps admiration? He would ask his father. When traitors are called heroes, or heroes traitors, he supposed in his frowning way, dark times must have fallen. He wished he understood better. His mind flashed to Court and the bread Court had given them. He felt contempt. The day was coming when Court would serve him. Perhaps not Cuthbert. Perhaps Cuthbert would buckle under Court's steady fire and remain a page or a horseboy, or infinitely worse, a perfumed diplomat, dallying in receiving chambers and looking into bogus crystal balls with doddering kings and princesses. But he would not. He knew it. "Roland?" "I'm here." He took Cuthbert's hand, and their fingers locked together like iron. The trap dropped. Hacks plummeted through, and in the sudden stillness there was a sound. That sound an exploding pine knot makes on the hearth during a cold winter night. But it was not so much. The cook's legs kicked out once in a wide Y. The crowd made a satisfied whistling noise. The guards of the watch dropped their military pose and began to gather things up negligently. The gunslinger walked back down the steps slowly, mounted his horse, and rode off, cutting roughly through one gaggle of picnickers, making them scurry. The crowd dispersed rapidly after that, and in 40 minutes the 2 boys were left alone on the small hill they had chosen. The birds were returning to examine their new prize. One lit on Hacks's shoulder and sat there chummily, darting its beak at the bright and shiny hoop Hacks had always worn in his right ear. "It doesn't look like him at all," Cuthbert said. "Oh, yes, it does," Roland said confidently, as they walked toward the gallows, the bread in their hands. Cuthbert looked abashed. They paused beneath the cross-tree, looking up at the dangling, twisting body. Cuthbert reached up and touched one hairy ankle defiantly. The body started on a new twisting arc. Then, rapidly, they broke the bread and spread the crumbs beneath the dangling feet. Roland looked back just once as they rode away. Now there were thousands of birds. The bread, he grasped this only dimly, was symbolic then. It was good, Cuthbert said suddenly. I liked it. I did. Roland was not shocked by this, although he had not particularly cared for the scene, but he thought he could perhaps understand it. I don't know about that, he said, but it was something. It surely was. The land did not fall to the good man for another 10 years, and by that time he was a gunslinger. His father was dead, he himself had become a matricide, and the world had moved on. Thank you so much for joining me in this short production of The Death of Hacks. I hope that you will join us again for the second half of The Gunslinger Dark Tower Series Book 1 by Stephen King, narrated by the Laughing Ogre.